Live free or die. For the first time since the Tiananmen Square Massacre 33 years ago, everyday Chinese people are publicly calling for dictator Xi Jinping to step down. More importantly, people of all backgrounds all over that enslaved land are calling for the Chinese Communist Party to be overthrown. Calls for democracy now. Fill the air. Since Tiananmen in 1989, the Chinese Communist Party has targeted anyone who advocated political reform for arrest, torture, execution, and the harvesting of their organs for sale on the international black market. Challenging communist rule was nothing less than a self-imposed death sentence. Despite this, Chinese men and women are taking to the streets, where they face militarized security forces whose brutality would make Himmler's Schutzstaffel blush. They have the spirit of that heroic man who blocked a line of tanks in 1989, only to be crushed beneath their treads once international cameras had been turned away. True liberty can only come from a willingness by flesh and blood individuals to risk everything in acts of desperate hope that the hell on earth made by the Chinese Communist Party might finally end. The sudden intensification of Xi's zero COVID policy has returned new generations of Chinese people to the days of Mao's Great Leap Forward and Cultural Revolution. These were by far the worst intentional mass murders in human history. They more than double Stalin's body count and more than quintuple Adolf Hitler's. The Chinese people from the late 1950s through the mid-1970s were subject to the whims of a genocidal, delusional Mao Zedong. His policies starved all Chinese outside his inner circle. Many tens of millions were starved to death. There was no escape from his adolescent Red Guards armed with Mao's Little Red Book, Kalashnikov rifles, and the power of life and death. Everyone was surveilled, their homes searched weekly by the communist block mothers. High and low, people were forced to write confessional diaries admitting to their communist masters to specific thought crimes. Everyone was expected to produce wrongthink, to report. Everyone, including Zhou Enlai, the second in command to Mao Zedong. Everyone except for Mao himself. Imagine a language without the word no, a city with no windows or doors, no curtains or shades. This was Mao's China. This is communist totalitarianism everywhere and every when. Today, with the help of Western collaborators, like the Apple company, like Bill Gates, like so many others, Xi Jinping's Chinese Communist Party has added the technology of ubiquitous cameras, microphones, and facial and voice recognition technology to his arsenal. Every single man, woman, and child is judged under an ideological social credit system, rewarding slavish obedience to their masters. Any deviation from utter devotion to the party limits a person's residential travel, employment, educational, and even food options. George Orwell's Oceania is an amateurish cartoon compared to the People's Republic of China. Despite the genuine terror of this surveillance state, regular people have been driven to take to the streets. What magnificent courage! What utter desperation! Faced with a government that has locked down whole cities for months, literally welding doors shut to keep people in their own homes until they starved or burned to death, the Chinese people are finally saying enough, risking everything. Chinese men and women from city and countryside, the coast and the interior, the field, the factory, and the university have stepped into the dangerous path of destiny. Yet, leaders in the Biden administration, the U.S. Congress, Western academia, the media, and in corporations like Disney and the National Basketball Association say nothing of value. They prevaricate, equating our nation's sins with those of the Chinese Communist Party. They are neutral at this moment of great moral significance. Why? Well, the obvious probability is that many of these luminaries have been bought off. So much Western money is made in China that many within our elites cannot risk offending the CCP for fear that they'll lose their financial benefits. They are knowingly in business with the greatest purveyors of genocide since Treblinka. They are akin to the IG Farben Chemical Company, which made business with the Nazis by building a chemical factory at Auschwitz-Birkenau death camp. Soulless greed certainly does play a role. However, there is also the hunger among many of our best and brightest to liberate the rest of us from our own messy freedoms. These vicious, inhumane humanitarians envy the sheer power over speech and action that the communists possess. They want that kind of power over us. So these megalomaniacal utopians among us say nothing that would cast aspersions against their blood-stained role models overseas. Beware of those whose ambition is to make sure that you do what you are told rather than what you would want to do. Beware of those who know better than you how you should live your life. These worthies do not see themselves as being meddlesome. They only want to make a difference in the world. They mean well. Our would-be saviors imagine that we of the great unwashed masses would simply be lost without their charitable interventions. Rather than facing up to their own life challenges, these reformers measure their worth by the acquisition of raw power to compel the rest of us to bend to their will. This is why the most ardent idealists among us are so often obsessed with amorally grasping at any power they possibly can. The historical record of past atrocities committed in failed attempts to build utopia makes absolutely no impression on their persistent good intentions. This time, they tell themselves, the revolution must succeed, because this time I am involved in leading the revolution. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King once said that the hottest place in hell was reserved for those who remain neutral in times of great moral conflict. A lust for money, or ambitions to use foul means to bring about fair ends are no excuse for this silence on the part of our elites. We must not be silent. We must stand with the Chinese people in their quest for human dignity and the freedom that we take for granted in any way we can. We must raise our voices in solidarity with the hopes of the Chinese people to live free or die.